Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 30th episode this season of the
Whoa.
Lions Grid, Jeffrey. We're at the big 3-0 here to recap the Week 15 that just passed here in the NFL, Jeffrey. And unfortunately, happy to have you here on the Tuesday, but it's only the second time we've been in this position this season, Jeffrey. But we're coming to you live after a Lions loss. How are you doing here, Jeffrey?
Uh, I think I'm hurting a little bit more than with the implication, not necessarily the implications for our loss, but kind of the carnage that continues to happen to this team. Um, but yeah, it's nice that we haven't been able to feel like this for a while, right? But we lost to the best team in football, so.
Yeah, and I know I've seen the numbers like post his engagement here. Josh Allen has like over 1,000 yards and like 10 touchdowns and no interceptions. So since becoming Haley Steinfeld's fiance, he has just been next level, and he kind of showed it here against the Lions.
Yeah.
Jeffrey, definitely. We were talking before this game. The roaring or boring was could Jared Goff, if the Lions handle business against the Bills, could he sort of open up the MVP race? But I think this was a game where Josh Allen kind of stuck his claim in the award here as we take a look at these highlights, Jeffrey.
He did, but I mean, Jared Goff still had himself a game in the
It,
loss. So
it was a very stat Padford-esque game there, Jeffrey, and I think we'll take a look at the box score in a moment. But if you listen to the calls that all Tony Romo was pointing out, that they were not able to run the ball, so they weren't able to take advantage of the play action that the Lions are sort of known for on the season. But a big part of that was the fact that they were behind in this game, so the Lions really did need to rely on Jared Goff in this passing game to even have a chance.
yeah, yeah, and it had to be through the passing game, and we ultimately won possession, so that fumble really hurts with Amon-Ra St. Brown, and yeah, it's I will say I think one of the maybe more questionable things, and you might bring this up a bit later, is the onside kick call there. Right, you kind of basically lost the possession and basically gave up a score with that decision instead of giving your defense a chance, and who knows what might have happened. But up until that point, they have not been able to stop the Bills. They only forced one punt, so it's. I see where you're coming from. Like, can you sneak extra possession here to try to control where we're at? But I just don't know if it was a great idea, especially because now you have to declare when you're doing an onside kick. So that kind of defeats the purpose of a surprise kind of thing.
It certainly does make it easy. Look at this. Sony getting. I think this is the first time since we started showing highlights, Jeffrey, on here that we've actually seen commercials come through. I know what it is. I'm not signed into my to the right Yahoo account. That's not Yahoo, the right YouTube account. So I don't have my YouTube Plus going to block the commercials. That's where we're at. That's where we're at. But you bring up a great point, Jeffrey. I think that's been talked about quite a bit, the onside kick, and some people looking at it as being just another drawback of the aggression that Dan Campbell has been known for here. People thinking that he was being potentially too aggressive in the play call. But I think, Jeffrey, you brought up some great counterpoints to that in the fact that, you hadn't been stopping this Bills offense all day. You forced the one punt, and that one punt, of course, which was off the foot of Sam Martin, who is a former Detroit Lion, pinned us deep, and it was not a good time. So, especially with the injuries that we had sustained on the defense in this game, I don't fault Dan Campbell for going for it. I think really it was unfortunate that Mark Hollins was able to make such a heads-up play on it and be able to take it down to the 3-yard line. There's no way a coach is predicting that to happen there, because it actually looked like a fairly well executed kick in terms of the onside kick. It took a pretty good hop there at the end.
Yeah,
Hollins just made a break on the ball and was able to return it there. So again, I look at it as sort of Dan Campbell having faith in this offense to come out and execute and win them games. So he was just, to me, I'm looking at it as he was trying to get the ball back into the offense's hands, especially with how the defense had struggled. So I, I don't hate the call. Was it maybe early in the game to go for an onside kick? That's an argument you can certainly have, but at the same time, when you're down, and you need the points to get back in the game. So it was one of those things where if it had it worked, it could have been a great tool to get momentum going in the Lions' favor, because this was certainly a game, Jeffrey, where I think two things felt different about this game than other games on the season. Number one, I think the Bills were the more physical team in this game, which was kind of, all season long, I think the Lions have been beating up on other teams, but this was a game where it felt like we were the less physical team.
Yeah, I feel we're starting to feel the effects of being 22 players deep into the IR now, right? Because it's hard to maintain that aggressive style of play. It's hard to bring it together every week, even just in a normal NFL kind of sequence of the season. But like when you're down this bad, and now you're changing almost completely who you are, at least on the defensive side of the ball, it's honestly not surprising that we got out physical today. Plus, we've played a lot of games in this past couple of weeks in a very short amount of time, so it's just a perfect storm here of things going on.
Absolutely. So I think the interesting thing is going to be to see how the Lions respond to this game here. Next up is the Bears, and of course the Bears are on an 8-game losing streak. They just got handled by the Vikings on Monday Night Football. So in terms of a challenge for the Lions, it's definitely a game. Even a short-handed Lions team, I feel they should be in a pretty good position to take care of the Bears. Now, one thing that is stacking against them is they are going to Chicago into the weather to play this game. Jared Goff did look good earlier this season when they played in Lambeau. But the issue or the knock against Jared Goff has always been that he struggles in outside environments in cold weather. So we'll have to see how he does in Chicago. But certainly, excuse me, certainly an opportunity here against a reeling Chicago team to get back on track. But it certainly opens things up in the NFC, right, Jeffrey? I think of the three teams now sort of tied at the top, well, not tied, the Lions still have the number one seed, but you now have the Lions, the Eagles, and the Vikings. Yeah. Of those three teams, I think home field advantage right now is more important to the Lions, given all the injuries.
Yeah, I agree. And I don't quite know if we'll get there. I mean, we have to taking care of the Bears is one thing. I remember we almost lost that game if the Bears not were just kind of inept towards the end of the game with their clock management. But our identity might change quite a bit, right? Because we lost half of our two-headed attack with David Montgomery going down. They split usage pretty 50-50 with him and Gibbs. So Gibbs is probably going to take on a bigger role. You're not going to be able to kind of keep people on snap counts. Probably you're going to see some of the younger talent at running back, maybe Vadai, see how how he will look out here. It's no guarantee. It's been no guarantee this entire year with just the way the top of the NFC has looked. And now we're going to have to scrape and claw at everything that we can get at this point.
Agreed. But one thing that is encouraging, and we see the Dan Skipper touchdown here. So the Lions were down 21-7 at this point, right, Jeffrey? And they still had the cojones, the gumption, the absolute gall to call this play to Dan Skipper to score a touchdown, already down 2 touchdowns. And really, they had a chance here before the half to really swing momentum and get closer here. And Amon-Ra St. Brown had gotten hit the play before, and then it was that third down conversion where he had a chance to catch the ball, but he dropped it and he'd gotten rocked the play before. So I really don't fault him for dropping it. But I think, we took a lot of blows in this game from the Bills, but they kept fighting. So this Lions team definitely doesn't have any quit in them. And I think the fact that they sort of got punched in the mouth here, now we really get to see them live those words that Dan Campbell's, sort of famous for. It's like, yeah, we may get punched in the mouth, we may get a bloody nose, we may, hit the ground, but we're going to get back up and we're going to bite some kneecaps on the way. We got 3 games left here to sort of respond to losing this game to the Bills and really try and solidify our place as the number 1 seed in this NFC. So the great news is that I shouldn't say the great news, but the good news is that we get to sort of settle things with Minnesota week 18. So definitely helps us out in terms of potentially being able to secure that number 1 seed.
Yeah, and with Minnesota, they got their win against the Bears. Philadelphia looking good also this week. They go on to play Washington, I believe, this coming up week.
They do. They finish their last 3 games. So of the 2, Philadelphia finishes up against all NFC East opponents, which Washington will be an interesting one. But unfortunately, that includes the Cowboys and the Giants, who, yeah. And then
we're going to play Seattle next week. So Seattle didn't look good, and Geno Smith, I believe, is down now and might not play this coming up week. So
yeah, but they do have the Packers the following week. They have the Packers and then us. So Minnesota has a tough path to go.
Mm-hmm.
Philadelphia, unfortunately, because they're in the NFC East, it's not that terrible. And then, of course, for the Lions, we have the Bears. We have the San Francisco 49ers, and then we finish up against the Vikings. So,
we're going to get a Chiefs-Eagles Super Bowl again, aren't we?
It could happen, Jeffrey. It's not out of the realm of possibility here.
Jeez. It's depressing.
But if we take a look here at the box score, Jeffrey, again, the Lions fell behind, so they were definitely in that pass mode to try and get back in this game. So no surprise that we see just a ton of yards there through the air for the Lions. Again, I think symptomatic of that, you only see the 48 rushing yards there for the Lions, but certainly our worst rushing performance of the year. But again, dictated by the fact that we were behind by multiple touchdowns throughout this game and really had to push the tempo to try and claw back to the 6-point differential here that the game ended at.
Yeah, and then it is encouraging though that the offense does able to put that kind of numbers up as far as production goes. We're gonna have to rely on them a lot more heavily than we have in the past. So it's time to retool. But Jared Goff, he although you had mentioned Stat Padford earlier, he played himself a fairly clean game, and it's something that he will need to do. And, I predict that he's going to have to step up a bit too.
Yeah. And definitely, I think there were some drops and some mishandling of the ball and things like that out of the receiver core, which I think more pressure is going to be put on this offense to be perfect, to carry this team. Losing David Montgomery is not a small thing, but if you look at the injuries, relatively speaking, the offense is the most intact unit we have. So, it's going to really be in this situation. I think it's really going to come down to how well they can play. And unfortunately, they played well against the Bills, but you're going to need to be perfect to beat some of these other teams just because, we're running out of bodies on defense.
Mm-hmm.
So it puts a lot of pressure on you there, which is not an easy task. But if we, taking a look here, Jeffrey, we were 3 for 3 on 4th downs, so that was a good thing there. The 3 sacks we allowed, we weren't able to get home on Josh Allen at all, and of course his ability to extend plays with his legs was an issue, especially because we are definitely a defense that sort of heavily favors man-to-man coverage, and it was sort of exposed there as being a little bit of a weakness for us here with Josh Allen and his ability just to take off, because especially having so many of the backups in the secondary, everyone's just focused on trying to stick with their guy. There aren't people taking a look in the backfield, and so it was kind of a glaring issue there on the defensive side of the thing, this defensive side this week. So, as we look at potentially taking on, Jalen Hurts in the NFC side of things. Baker Mayfield has hurt us before. Uh, Definitely those mobile QBs may continue to be an issue, especially if we continue to stick to the man coverage with some new bodies back there.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Aaron Glenn retools and maybe puts us a little bit more in more shell kind of defenses, maybe just like to keep things in front of us because of the lack of pass rush now and really everybody just not being there. I think we have Zadarius Smith and uh, who else kind of thing on the line, right? And it's gonna be difficult.
Hey, Aiden Hutchinson he walked into Ford Field, man. And if we can just get there, he may be able to get back. And I kind of we'll take a look here. I can see a little bit of a bait and switch coming. Look, the defense is hurt bad. The offense has to be perfect from my father here on YouTube, and they won't be.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Yep. But Jeffrey, I think
last week was nice. It was very quiet and not a lot of hate in the air.
Well, you can't see him, but he's actually back there behind me in the background. He's actually over at the moment, so he's not that far away from.
What's he doing over here?
He is over for some spaghetti dinner tonight,
oh, nice.
So he's back there lurking.
All right.
But I think one thing, Jeffrey, too, that has hurt this defense is we're kind of I don't know how many weeks it's been, but we have not been forcing a lot of turnovers. There haven't been interceptions have kind of dried up. We haven't seen teams put the ball on the ground a whole lot fumbling. And so, one of the ways that you can overcome some of these injuries is if you cause takeaways, and we're just not seeing that happen. So both teams did a good job of taking care of the ball in this game. Oh, here he is. He's making an appearance.
You can't get takeaways. Hello, Jeff.
Hello.
You cannot get takeaways when you are dealing with third and fourth string people. They are doing a decent job just keeping in games and actually winning. But they come across these good teams, they're going to get scrapped. I suspect they're going to end up beating Minnesota. Minnesota's not that good. However, I do believe that if Darnold gets his head out of his ass and throws to Jefferson, the Lions are going to get ran out of that building because there ain't nobody on the field right now who's going to keep up with Jefferson if he decides, no. Yeah, they just don't have it. And it's not their fault.
Yeah.
When you lose your starters, you lose your backups, and now you're on to your third, fourth, fifth string guys that other teams have cut. It is what it is, but that's the game. So, yeah, they suck. They're going to lose again. But, Jeff, you're happy about it, so I'm okay.
Yeah. So, yeah, and especially if Darnold's going to be throwing 5 touchdown passes and kind of reversing his script in the beginning of the year, and he plays at a high level, and the Green Bay now has a door in here as well, so it's a little spooky. Our seeding could drop dramatically by the end of this.
Yeah, it's it certainly is upsetting that despite going on an 11-game winning streak, nothing is guaranteed for this team. So 3 weeks left in the season, and unfortunately, everything but a playoff berth still left to fight for here for the Lions.
Yes.
All right, Jeffrey. Well, let's go ahead and grind the grid here as we take a look at the rest of the Week 15 NFL action. And, of course, things got started on Thursday Night Football with an NFC West matchup between the Los Angeles Rams and the San Francisco 49ers. And, Jeffrey, it was kind of a snoozer, poor weather. We talked about this game a little bit before on Sunday. No touchdowns in this game. And, the Rams doing their best to try and stick in that NFC playoff race there, trying to get into the wild card spot.
Yeah.
And maybe, as you mentioned, with the Geno Smith injury, not crazy to think maybe they could get that NFC West top spot now.
Yeah, that division is definitely in flux here. Sean McVay and Matt Stafford and really that team is finding ways to win, and they're playing a lot better than they did, and they're getting stronger each week, despite them not having that offensive touchdown kind of thing. But weather had a lot to do with that. But yeah, that team is spicy. They're currently, like you said, leading the division. They're at the 4th seed now at 8-6. So, but most importantly, they're 3-1 against their own division, so they're taking care of it and staying afloat here.
And that's usually the key to success for when it comes to winning division crowns. If you can beat everybody in your division, it usually leaves you in pretty good shape.
Yeah, you could be in a division like the NFC South or the AFC South. It'd be like, well, as long as we tread water, we're good.
We can do just fine. Go 500 against the rest of the league. Just beat up on our own division opponents. And then, Jeffrey, we talked about how if Washington dropped this game, it could get spicy, and they kind of did their best, despite the fact that the Saints were swapping in rookie quarterbacks there behind center. Jake Haener getting the start here, but Washington able to get the 20-19 victory. Washington, a team that should be in the postseason, Jeffrey, at this point, and the Saints definitely a team that, while not mathematically eliminated at this point, I think is definitely headed towards the off season being the highlight for them, not the postseason. So
yeah, New Orleans going on to take Green Bay this week, and Washington, they did their best to lose this game, but ended up pulling it out. But Rizzi, though, the interim head coach, do you think he's going to get a shot at the head coaching job here? Continue on with this, because he's 3-2.
It's going to be interesting. He hasn't been he hasn't been terrible here for them, and the team certainly responded to him. Of the teams that have gotten rid of their head coaches here during the season, the Saints have had the most wins of any of those teams. So I certainly think he hasn't I wouldn't say he's come out here and certainly solidified himself, but I don't think he's done. I think his performance certainly hasn't been like, there's nothing that I've seen out of him so far that would make me say I don't want him as my head coach. Certainly, I think he should be, if all things are even, probably has the best chance of being the next head coach for the Saints.
Yeah, I think Vrabel's still out there. Belichick's obviously off the table now. He's going
headed to UNC.
Into UNC, so he's off the table. And yeah, it might it's slim pickings as far as right now. They could probably take a swing for one of our coaches. Wouldn't be surprising if they take a swing at like Ben Johnson or something like that. But I think Rizzi should get an interview at least.
Absolutely. And then welcome to the show there, mile marker 301. I don't think perfect offense is needed as long as they dominate the clock at Kevin Martin. So responding to my father there. Yeah, I think certainly losing David Montgomery is going to be an interesting thing to see how that impacts our ability to control the clock for the Lions. I think definitely having both Sonic and Knuckles out there makes me feel a lot more confident with our ability to hold on to the ball and chew clock. Being down to just Sonic, it's definitely not a great feel, but when you look at the loss to the Bills, it was one of the few games where we haven't controlled the time of possession. And again, part of that was just because we fell behind so early that we had to really switch to a pass first offense. So I think against those good teams, if we can keep their superstars on the sideline, certainly makes it easier and we don't fall behind early. But as the Bills showed there, if they jump out to an early lead, it kind of changes the whole chemistry of the game there, Jeffrey.
Yeah. And despite our offense being so explosive, we do like to ground and pound quite a bit because I know the clock game is a big thing for us. So I'll be excited to see the young talent behind Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. Pretty much they're the only running backs we see ever, really. So we get to take a look at our more depth pieces there. Our run blocking scheme and just our run offense and our line is strong enough to where I think we can have anybody back there to be successful. Hopefully, so we'll see.
All right. And then, Jeffrey, of course, unfortunately, while we just can't keep on winning, the Chiefs, they just keep finding ways.
They looked fairly
Although
convincing in this game.
they did, but at what cost, Jeffrey? At
Yeah.
what cost to Patrick Mahomes' ankles is going to be the question. That's probably the biggest news coming out of this game. And then, Jeffrey, I know Jamison Winston has been, we sort of know he's playing with fire. He's that dual bladed sword. Sometimes he's doing great things for you. Other times he's turning it over. But he gets pulled in this game, Jeffrey, because of that duality. And do you think this is going to be the last we see of Jameis Winston at behind center for an NFL team? Because this is his last year under contract with the Browns.
Yeah, Dorian Thompson-Robinson is kind of who they have left at this point. And with 3 games, I mean, you might as well see what your kind of younger talent has to do. I mean, he hasn't looked good when he's been in there, but maybe give him a few starts and just kind of see where it goes. But, I think if with Jameis, I strongly suggest he's going to, or strongly surmise that he is going to be on a team as far as like being a third or second string, because he seems like a good locker room guy. I give him that. But as far as taking meaningful snaps at starter, I don't think so.
Yeah, it's getting rough there, but I definitely agree. His teammates seem to love him, and he definitely seems to be a guy who has a lot of passion for football and everything like that. So not a detriment to have on your team. But yeah, if you're expecting him to come in and be your starter, it's I mean, there's going to be some good moments, but unfortunately, it seems like the bad is just going to win out in the end.
Yeah.
All right, Jeffrey. Why don't you talk to us here about this Cincinnati-Tennessee game?
This game featured 10 total turnovers, over 200 yards of penalties between both teams. It was pretty wild. The Bengals ended up winning 37-27. Will Levis, I think, is headed for the bench permanently after this. We got to see Mason Rudolph come in and finish out the game here. But Joe Burrow didn't look as good. I mean, he threw 2 picks, but ultimately he's kind of still producing. But I think it's kind of him having to play hero ball because of the way the rest of the team is. And even though they were winning, there were a few shots of him on the sideline of him being just like pissed off at teammates and stuff. So
yeah, they were doing some lip readings of what he was saying.
Yeah, he's like, "We effing suck, man. This is it was not good." So headspace is not good there. Even though they did beat Tennessee, but again, Tennessee is a bit of a dumpster fire themselves here. But I think the biggest thing really here is that Will Levis that experiment might be over. He was drafted as a raw talent. He's super athletic, big dude. He has an arm, but he can't ever not make dumb mistakes every other play. Kind of like Jameis Winston almost, but less refined. So I don't know if they're going to, them being 3-11, they're fighting for some pretty high picks here. So it will be it'll be interesting to see if Will Levis remains on this team.
Yeah, and spoiler alerts, it also this performance helped escalate Brian Callahan, the head coach of the Titans, onto our hot butts list, because I've certainly seen him starting to pop up more in conversations about being on the hot seat there. So he is a first year coach, but and he's not the only first year coach that's been added to the list. So we'll talk about that in a little bit as well.
Yeah.
All right, Jeffrey. Then next up, we have, who do we got here? We have Miami and Houston.
Yeah, so I think Tua Tagovailoa did not have a good game here. Miami's offense just after several weeks of kind of putting together, looking a lot better. It kind of fell here to the Houston, who's a better team. Houston going up to 9-5 with the Colts losing here. They're solidifying themselves at the top of the division, but But yeah, 4 turnovers by Miami really is kind of what's helped seal the deal, because Miami won the time of possession. Miami actually outgained Houston, but Houston took care of the ball a little bit more. They were less sloppy than the Dolphins here. But
yeah, and losing Jalen Waddle seemed to be a big thing for the Dolphins here too. He left this game, and he had kind of been coming on here in the last couple of weeks, sort of getting things figured out now with Tua back from, of course, his early injuries with concussions. So
yeah, neither quarterback broke 200 yards. two three picks. So Houston's a shaky division leader here. I wouldn't have thought that coming into the season, but they just have not looked as good as they apparently were kind of touted as.
Yeah, and cosmically, it just doesn't seem fair, right, Jeffrey? These guys are going to go ahead and win their back-to-back division titles. Haven't looked as convincing. The Lions are out here trying to go for their back-to-back division titles. Have come out here and dominated for 11 games, and it looks like it's going to. There's the potential it might elude us. So it's,
yeah. And meanwhile, you have the AFC South here, 3-11, 3-11, 6-8, and then a 9-5. It's like, damn.
It's just the way it is, man. Yep. But it hurts. It hurts. And then Jeffrey, why don't you talk to us about Baltimore's get right game here against the?
I alluded to as much in the last episode. Baltimore had that 15.5 pounds of wood on them as far as being favorites, and clearly showed here it was a get right game. Lamar Jackson throwing for 5 touchdowns. Derrick Henry getting a good game. Rashad Bateman with catching 2 of those touchdowns, but. Yeah, just a complete and utter destruction of the Giants, who's a team that's just kind of floating off into the abyss and waiting for this season to be mercifully ended. They did have, I guess, some fans paid paid an airplane to fly one of those banners behind there, being like, Mara, you got to fire everybody. And apparently he got a rise out of that. But it's just not good. They're in paper bag over the head territory.
Yep. I saw several fans.
They're seeing Tim Boyle throw some meaningful passes here with 3 games left, with Tommy Cutlets getting concussed out of the game. So just a tale of 2 completely different trajectories and seasons.
Yeah, rough time to be a Giants fan. Rough time
to be a New York fan, man. That's
rough. That's very fair.
That's rough.
Although, Jeffrey, you know what can make a New York team feel better is taking on an NFC South team. As the Jets were able to get the 32-25 victory over the Jaguars. And Jeffrey, we've talked about how Doug Peterson is kind of a dead man walking there as the head coach for Jacksonville, because it has just been an ugly season. Excuse me. But Devontae Adams and Aaron Rodgers, again, finding some of that old magic here against the Jags.
Do you think it's going to be enough? Do you think this is going to do the thing, what I'm assuming Jets fans hope doesn't happen, is that they try to run it back with any of this on offense again next year?
That it's enough to convince them that maybe, maybe.
Yeah, see, they still got it.
I if it was any team but the Jaguars, maybe. But I think, who knows? Maybe not. Maybe the Jets organization can't recognize that if it was any other team, it might be more impactful. But I don't know. Both of these 2 teams, the Jets now 4-10, the Jaguars 3-11. Really, I guess it's almost more the more Jets thing to do is to worsen their potential draft position by winning this game. So, it's
well, I mean, you got Mac Jones tank commanding you out there. You can't, as far as tanking for the pick, there's no better tank commander.
Yep, you're absolutely right. Although I will say that him and Brian Thomas, they looked good as well in this game. So, I mean, Mac Jones did have 2 interceptions, but Brian Thomas, 10 receptions, 105 yards, and 2 TDs. So if you're in your fantasy football playoff, the rookie there certainly coming through for some people, despite being on a objectively awful team.
Yeah.
All right, Jeffrey. We talked about this game a little bit as we were watching the Lions game on Sunday together, but your lock of the week might have just been a little too heavy on that Dallas Cowboy hate.
Yeah, I think my hatred of the Dallas Cowboys really clouded my judgment on this pick here. Carolina was favored for one of the first times this season, so it wasn't too out of the realm of possibilities, given that they've been playing so well, and Dallas is not. But just not good. The Carolina kind of looked like a bad team out there this week, and Dallas got themselves I don't know if I'd call it a get right game, but Rico Dowdle got himself almost $150, 149 yards on 25 carries. So he had a nice breakout game there. CeeDee Lamb also having over 100-yard game. Although you could tell he's hurting. You could tell that it's just if it wasn't for the talent disparity, I think it might have been a different story. But yeah, just a slightly better team taking on a worse team here. So. But Dallas not completely out of it for some reason, some way. 6-8.
Mathematically
they're in still. Yeah, but
well, it is, I guess, a very Cowboys-esque thing to do, to have a season where you're not bad enough where you get one of the top talents in the draft, but also not good enough where you make the playoffs. That does seem to fit right about for the struggles of Cowboy fans.
Have the Cowboys, outside of being good and then just kind of mediocre, have they recently had a season where they're like a top 5 pick? I can't even think of one. I feel like they're like never up there.
Yeah,
that could be part of the problem, right? Like you keep trying to half fix things, and you're just kind of stuck in Jeff Fisher land and purgatory.
Stuck in that limbo.
Yeah.
Could very well be the case.
Yeah.
Now, Jeffrey, for this next game, for my lock of the week, I thought this was going to be spicy, but Baker Mayfield and the Buccaneers had different plans about this game. They came out here, and I want to say they were only, let's see, I have it written down here from last week. How many point favorites were they? They were 3-point favorites when I locked them in. They end up getting the win here, 40-17. Baker throws for 4 touchdowns. Bucky Irving goes for over 100 yards on the ground. Mike Evans hauls in 2 touchdowns and 159 yards. They just go off on the poor Chargers here. And Justin Herbert did play in this game. He was out there. But this was pretty much all Buccaneers all day.
They're becoming a scary team down there. They
are a problem.
I think the division is really theirs for the taking when they get to play Atlanta again, so get to figure that out. But I would not want to see them in the playoffs. They'd be like near the top of my list on the NFC playoffs, where I wouldn't want us having to play them.
Absolutely. And unfortunate. Well, I mean, it's kind of unfortunate because they are likely to be the number 3 seed. So that means they're probably squaring off with the number 6, or it should be what? Yeah, the number, is it going to be the number 6 seed? I think they'll be squaring off with. So depending on how things work out, that could unfortunately
be us.
That could be us. And I don't know if I want to head to Tampa Bay to take on this team.
Yeah, 12-win team oh man, just crazy. This year's wild.
Yeah, it just can't take anything for granted. And speaking of not being able to take anything for granted, Jeffrey, the Colts had it. You were talking earlier that Houston, an AFC South title was still wide open, and they had a chance here in this game, Jeffrey, to grasp greatness, to really put the pressure on the Texans, and they just decided to give this game away to the Broncos in just so many ways. There were so many things they did that just I don't know. I can only it is just more evidence that the NFL is scripted, because I don't know how you can have those 3 interceptions they got off of Bo Nix and have the Broncos get a 31-13 victory. Jonathan Taylor 2 times this weekend, Jeffrey. We had players drop a ball on their way into the end zone.
Going full Deshaun Watson, man, or not? Deshaun Jackson. Deshaun Jackson.
Yeah, just crazy, man. Jonathan Taylor. He'll come up again later when we get to our champs and chumps of the week. But this was ugly game for the Colts. Great win for the Broncos. Certainly, it seems like we'll be seeing them in the AFC side of the playoffs. But after this loss from the Colts, I think Shane Steichen is now feeling the heat a little bit underneath him because this was just an ugly game really across the board where they had every opportunity to get a win, and they just sort of handed this one over to the Broncos.
Yeah, it's one of those games where like you'd rather be lucky than good for the Broncos. But on the other side with the Colts, I mean, we got still another inefficient day from Anthony Richardson. What is going to, kind of be the what's going to be the thing moving forward? I mean, we, not to spoil it too much, but is Shane Steichen his seat heating up because of this? Well, because I guess just a lot of things. I feel like the Colts are like just on the edge of being a half decent team, but with kind of the up and down nature of Anthony Richardson and then the shenanigans, like dropping the ball before you cross the goal line, like those kinds of things just like are hallmarks of this team right now.
Absolutely. And I think there are just a lot of hot butts down there in the AFC South. You don't be surprised if you see 3 of the 4 head coaches on our list, because it is just it's not, you're not seeing good football out of really any of those. Even the Texans, you're not seeing great football out of. So,
which one of these teams is going to pull a New York Jets and hire an Adam Gase-like figure from this group of crappy head coaches to sign a head coach who may have been in a crappy situation, but because he's crappy?
If I had to guess, I would say probably the Colts, just because their owner is also a dumpster fire. It's been a little while since we've heard from Jim Irsay, but he is definitely one of those coaches that, one of those owners that I don't have a whole lot of trust in, outside of being a guy who's going to come in and mess things up.
Mm-hmm.
But that's my guess. So.
That's your guess, yeah. I could almost see the Jets doing it again. I don't know. I could almost see them doing something like that again, being like, oh, Antonio Pierce, he might be just what the players need to get back onto this kind of thing.
Just what would fix this. And yeah, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. But then, Jeffrey, why don't you talk to us here about this Patriots-Cardinals game?
Yeah, so the Cardinals finally ended a losing streak that they were on here. My tab closed with all my notes on this. But not without keeping it close here with the Patriots. They with that division, that being the Cardinals division, being that competitive here, you need to take care of business against a team that's kind of also floating into the abyss a little bit. At least it looks like they may have gotten their future quarterback figured out, Drake May, because he still continues to look, decent for a rookie quarterback given the entire situation around him. It's almost a get right game here for the Cardinals, and it keeps them in that hunt, in that dismal record, at least wise, that division they've got.
Yeah, and we'll talk about it more too when we get to the hot butts, but almost the more interesting thing for the Patriots happened in the post-game press conference. Before that, during the game, they had caught pictures of Jonathan Kraft being sort of fuming up in his owner's box during the game. And then when it came time for the press conference, Gerard Mayo threw the offensive coordinator under the bus in front of the media. So, it's kind of hard to believe how far the premier organization in the NFL has how far they've fallen from such great heights.
Right. Yeah. And it was bound to happen at some point, but it's weird seeing that this is kind of like the Gerard Mayo was essentially the successor groomed to be the next coach after Bill Belichick, and just kind of how everything's been going. It just has not panned out, I think, the way that definitely not the way that Robert Kraft was expecting it, because he's a big champion of Mayo.
I definitely think he has probably a decent shot of coming back. But you mentioned a coach earlier who, if there was somebody who I think could make things spicy for him in terms of coming back for his second year, Mike Vrabel. That, of course, is a name that a former Patriot there himself as a player. So could be spicy, especially if you somehow compare Mike Vrabel with like a Josh McDaniels. That seems to be like something that would get Kraft all hot and bothered. So,
I don't know. I think Bill Belichick's I think he said that he gets to, the only way he was accepting his job, one of the things was there is that he gets his definitely gets his homeboy Hall of Fame, McDaniels, Matt Patricia somehow. I think Matt Patricia like saved his life or something. There's guy that like he owes him like
a life debt or something.
Yeah, there's like no way. How is this possible? But yeah, that's besides the point.
Too far. Go back. All right. And then, of course, Jeffrey, we've already talked about this game quite a bit, but Buffalo getting the 48-42 victory over the Lions. Only 6 points ended up separating the two teams, but certainly it was one of, as mentioned, the only game really this season where it felt like we got punched in the mouth, Jeffrey.
Hey, but we just gotta smile, as Dan Campbell said.
Just spit out that tooth and smile, baby.
We got grit and bear it.
And then, Jeffrey, this was one of the matchups we talked about being excited heading into this weekend. Why don't you talk to us here about the Packers Seahawks?
Yeah, we were expecting a kind of a close game, possibly a spooky game, with it being at Seattle, but Green Bay took care of business. Seattle really couldn't get too much going on offense. Geno Smith ends up getting knocked out with a knee injury, although it's not like a structural injury, it looks like, but it might keep him out next week at least. So with that kind of on the Seahawks' agenda here, that spells kind of a kind of a scary situation for you, because one, you go down here, you don't look good at home against the Packers, and you have seeded your you're tied with Los Angeles. Los Angeles has the tiebreaker now, so you're not doing yourself too many favors, and now you're not going into the next game without your starting quarterback. So,
and that next game is Minnesota is your opponent. So
yeah, so it is spooky there if you're a Seattle fan.
Yeah, it's not an easy recipe for success there.
The Packers, I think they're a good team. They can keep up and run on bad teams, and they can keep up with anybody. I mean, they're really their big losses are to us. So it's we handing them half of their losses this year. So I think I think this is more. It tells us more a little bit about Seattle than it does about Green Bay, as far as how much trouble they're in and how their vibe is kind of going into these last three games and them fighting for that division spot.
Absolutely. And Josh Jacobs also continues to be just a force for the Packers. Again, being between him, Saquon, and Derrick Henry, really, again, just really highlighting how that sort of every down it's hard to find a guy that can be that every down back, but if you do have that guy, hey man, they're worth holding on to because they can be big difference makers.
Mm-hmm.
And then Jeffrey, we had 2 Monday Night Football games this weekend. Why don't you talk to us here about the NFC North matchup? Okay. Bless you again.
'Tis the season. Whew, yeah, so a Monday night game doubleheader. This one, the Chicago Bears getting obliterated 30-12 here. Minnesota clearly looking like the better team and clearly a front runner in the NFC. And you've got the Chicago Bears, who are, I think I've said this multiple times this episode, but they're just kind of floating off into the abyss, waiting for the end of this season. Can't come enough. There was a shot on the sideline of Caleb Williams. He just took he just got obliterated on a play. He was there just kind of sitting by himself. No medical team came to look at him. No teammates came to talk. It's sad. It's sad. And apparently this came out of reporting, the beat reporting earlier before this game, in that Caleb Williams was kind of going around and, he's trying to be a good leader and get everybody involved and all that. But one of his quotes kind of took off a little bit, was just when you lose this much, how do you kind of like, how do you move on? How do you deal with it? It's like, oh man, he's already there.
He's
And
in the fields, man.
he's in the field.
He is in the fields.
Yeah. So just a just a just a rough thing for Caleb Williams. I think they would have been actually better off having their offensive coordinator stay working with the offense and put someone else as the interim head coach and not make the offensive coordinator now have to handle all those intern duties. But I don't get paid to make those decisions.
Hey, maybe someday if someone wants to offer you the job, GM of the Bears.
Yeah, maybe.
I imagine they're going to be in the market here this offseason. So
I'll put up my I'll send them a thumb drive of all of my Madden franchises through the years and be like, see, look how many Super Bowls I won.
Have ChatGPT make you a nice resume and send it on over. I like it. And then Jeffrey, in the other Monday Night Football matchup for our doubleheader here, this one a bit of a snoozer, but the Falcons getting the 15-9 victory. The Falcons are now 7-7, Jeffrey. They are lingering around in that NFC South conversation, but they're a team that doesn't have any like excitement about them, Jeff. There's no wonder, there's no sparkle. People are already talking more interested on the fact is this going to be a one and done season for Kirk Cousins down in Atlanta, as opposed to is he going to get them into the playoffs and are they going to go on a run? And of course for the Raiders, they're now 2-12, another team that's kind of just waiting for the abyss to claim them. It was a potential revenge game here for Desmond Ridder, who as the third string quarterback for the Vegas Raiders was in here. But yeah, I mean, if you just look at it on paper, a team that's in second place in their division trying to get into the wild card spot should absolutely beat a 2-win team season. The fact they only were able to do it by 6 points, Jeffrey, concerning. Kirk Cousins only threw for 112 yards in this game. It does, man, the Falcons, comparatively, if they somehow are able to win the NFC South, I feel like it's a huge injustice because the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are a team that I think you cannot take lightly. Whereas if you draw the Falcons, I
think our pass rush could
glass.
get to that Stone Age pony back there in Kirk Cousins, man.
Yeah, the Healy's brothers have Aaron Rodgers and Kirk Cousins have not looked good.
The Achilles brothers.
It's just not the same.
Yeah,
but,
and it do you turn it over to Michael Penix? Does
if he can bring some big Penix energy in there, they need something, man. They need some sort of lift.
Yeah, but maybe they've self-scouted and Michael Penix is clearly not ready. That's why they're kind of doing this. So we don't quite know. We don't quite know, but as of right now, they're still holding the fort.
They are, in my opinion, the worst team on the bubble. There's nothing to get you excited about the team. Yeah. Not even Bijan, who ran for over 100. Nothing's getting you going. And then Kyle Pitts, of course, earlier this season, finally started to do stuff, and now he's back in tight end fantasy football jail. Doesn't dropping donuts. It's just aggravating, Jeffrey. Aggravating. Well, speaking of aggravating, Jeffrey, as we switch over to our hot butts here, there are quite a few franchises with frustrating situations. And of course, as we start here with our S+ tier, the 3 head coaches who have been removed from their duties. Of course, Matt Eberflus and the Bears, they're on that 8-game losing streak. It's just bad to be the Bears. The Jets are what they are. The Saints, I think the Bears are the worst team here between the 3 of them, and it's just bad. It's just bad.
Yeah, the Bears and the Jets would be an entertaining game to watch at least.
Our S tier hasn't changed too much. We still have Antonio Pierce, Brian Dable with the Giants, and then Doug Peterson there with Jacksonville. I think these 3 guys are likely to be relieved of their duties at the end of the season. But where we do have some changes here, Jeffrey, is at our A tier. 3 new faces popping up, and we did remove Mike McCarthy because everyone keeps saying that he should be safe for the 2025 season. I'm not going to believe it until I see the contract, Jeffrey, because it could just be Jerry Jones doing coach speak, or I guess the owner version of coach speak. But Gerard Mayo, again, just the seeing a head coach go in front of the media and just toss their offensive coordinator under the bus the way he did, seeing Kraft being upset in the owner's box, it doesn't feel good in New England. So I think his seat's getting warmer. Shane Steichen with the Colts, and then Brian Callahan, the other new face here with the Titans. Again, 2 AFC South teams there, and the other one, of course, being in our S tier. So 3 of the 4 AFC South team head coaches. Could we see, Jeffrey, 3 of the 4 teams replace their head coach here this upcoming offseason?
Yeah, I could definitely see it. The thing that makes me not think about Brian Callahan is because a first year kind of leeway, but based on rumbling, that might not be the case. Gerard Mayo, there was rumbling at the beginning of the season even about him not necessarily gelling with the locker room. So, it remains to be seen if that's going to kind of come up again towards the end here. But Zach Taylor's an interesting one. That front office is typically pretty forgiving with their head coaching position over the year. But I think with Joe Burrow just being actively pissed out there, just with what he's seeing, we might see something.
Yeah, I did almost remove Zach Taylor this week, but again, with just some of the angst on the sideline, it doesn't feel like he's quite in the clear yet. But you're absolutely right. The Bengals are a historically pretty loyal franchise, so I don't know what that Jenga block is going to be for them to make it so Zach Taylor loses his head coaching gig. But I also know the Bengals probably don't want to find out what that Jenga brick is that causes it to topple down.
Yeah, and I think it's also a foregone conclusion that Lou Anarumo is going to be relieved of his duties of defensive coordinator there at the end of the year. I could see that being a save face, being like, look, the defense was trash this year. We're going to take care of it at the coordinator level kind of thing.
He's going to eat the threat and save Zach Taylor. Could be because I feel like that happened for Marvin Lewis before. I feel like there were a couple times where his coordinators had to take the heat, and it kept him around.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely a head coaching trope. Like, let's cut a coordinator. It's rarely worked, I'd say. Sean McDermott probably brings reminds me of it kind of more recently. He fired his offensive coordinator
Ken Dorsey
last year. And
but to be fair, Joe Brady was cooking here against the Lions. So
yeah, he was.
He did find a good replacement.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, I think Kevin Stefanski, I think, is going to be safe. But yeah, it's I think it's a good list. And I actually wouldn't mind putting up, given that Dallas is really an unknown with Jerry, putting McCarthy back in this list just based off of the eye.
Put him up here in the corner, just have him hiding out, just like they say no, but maybe yes. All right, Jeff. And then if we switch to our Kings of the North segment, at least for one more week, Jeffrey, we'll keep the crown because we do have the current tiebreaker over the Vikings. But again, we're on that collision course for the Week 18 matchup, which could decide if we get to bring that crown home for back-to-back seasons, or if, unfortunately, we have to claw our way through the wild card.
Yeah, it's a somber feeling for the first time, I think, this season. Right, we've had somber moments, when we first lost Aiden Hutchinson, when we just losing guys week after week, and a few weeks ago we're like, can we stay healthy? That's probably the best case scenario, and we've not so far. So somber at the top. We're looking a little shaky up there as far as just like having just warm bodies. So we'll take it one more week, but see what happens.
Yep, they definitely have a shot, but it is not an easy road for this Lions team. And as mentioned, I do think the offense is going to have to really carry this team for them to reach the ceiling that they had in mind. But Jared Goff did look good, so it's just going to be a matter of how can you overcome some of these other teams that are also playing well. I think we can certainly handle business against bad teams, which hopefully we'll do this weekend against the Bears. But against the other top tier teams, it's going to be interesting to see if they can find a way to get it done. All right, Jeffrey, to end the episode here, we're going to go with our champs and chumps of the week. And I'm going to get started with my champ of the week here, and I'm going to give it to Mr. Ed Oliver, the defensive lineman for the Buffalo Bills. I got to give credit where credit is due. And Jeffrey, as mentioned, this was one of the few games that it's felt like we were out. We were the lesser physical of the two teams that were playing. And I think a play that really encompassed that was when Ed Oliver ran over Frank Ragnow for a sack. And Frank Ragnow is definitely he is a foundational piece of this toughness of the culture that we have built here with this Lions team. And to see Ed Oliver just run him over and continue to make the play, it just, I mean, just got to give him kudos, man. It was a big moment, and he was a problem for this offensive line. That is one of the better offensive lines in the league. And I'd always, when Ed Oliver was coming out, there wasn't a way we were going to be able to draft him, but I was kind of hoping we'd find a way to get him, and it just didn't work out. But impressing there with the Bills.
Yeah, that's a good pick. There's a lot of Bills I could got the champ of the week there, but I like that pick because the destruction of Frank Ragnow was
taking one of our strengths and turning it into a weakness. I mean, Josh Allen, of course, would have been the slam dunk, no-brainer pick because he's having an MVP season. But I like what I saw out of Ed Oliver. Now, Jeffrey, who did you have as your champ for this week? My
champ of the week, I decided to stay with the Lions. There were a couple of defensive performances I was looking at. Devin Singletary, he had a great game on with Houston's defense here, but I'm going to keep it in-house here just for morale's sake and say Jared Goff, despite all the stuff that's been going on, dropping his teammates dropping left and right, he still came out here and outproduced Josh Allen in a loss. So he's still keeping up his end of the bargain as far as keeping the offense running here. So, we at the end of the day, we lost by one possession to the best team in the league. So I just got to give it to him that he's got to be our touchdown Jesus here going forward.
I mean, and he certainly put in the best effort he could. I think, it was unfortunate that we fell behind by so much. If the scoring happened in a different way, I think there's certainly there's a part of the multiverse out there where we won this game, Jeffrey, and I think Jared Goff.
And we had Aiden Hutchinson, and we had all these guys. Oh man!
All right, now Jeffrey, who did you have as your chump for this week?
Chump of the week, I think we're both keeping it on the same theme here. I'm gonna go with Jordan Battle. Defensive player for the Bengals who got a fumble recovery, ran it all the way back to the end zone, but dropped the ball before he got across the line. Come on, people. This is this should be happening much less twice in the same week. You got to run through the finish line. That's what they taught me in middle school track, man. If you have a 100-meter dash, you're running 110, 120 because you were securing it before you let your guard down.
But don't drop that ball until you're under the uprights, man.
Yeah.
And you're right. We did keep a similar theme, although the Colts collapse was so bad that I couldn't just give it to Jonathan Taylor, who is my chump of the week. But I have to it's Jonathan Taylor and the Colts because that was a team effort to give that game away to the Broncos. Jonathan Taylor, as you mentioned, had the touchdown run, and he did the same thing Jordan Battle did, where he was about to cross that goal line and said nope, and then he went out through the back of the end zone. A nice touchback there for Denver, and they took it away from there. But there were just so many things in this game. Like I said, they had 3 interceptions from Bo Nix, and they didn't score any points off it. I don't. And they're a team that was playing to try and keep pace with the Texans. or even keep their wild. And they just, I have never seen a team just come out here and just poop the bed like this. And yeah, Jonathan Taylor was a great example with that one play, but like it was a team effort, a team decision to come out here and lose this game. And they committed. I'll at least give them that as my chumps of the week. They committed to this loss. They embraced it wholeheartedly.
Yeah, the Colts have been having kind of a rough spell here. Even, when they had some excitement with Anthony Richardson last year, he got hurt. They barely made it into the kind of that wild card bubble there, losing that last game to get them bounce them out of the playoffs. But yeah, I agree. It's there needs to be some major development and improvement, at least on the quarterback play for them between now and next year.
Yeah, they seem like a team without like there's no future path. There's no future state they're working towards. They're just kind of surviving, and it doesn't look good. They're surviving, not thriving. All right, Jeffrey. Well, want to thank everybody who tuned in this Tuesday night with us. Whether you're on YouTube, Facebook, or Twitch, we definitely appreciate everyone's support and all the comments and chat and things like that. I know, Jeffrey, we're now up to 70 subscribers on YouTube. Ooh. Of course, our goal is to hit that 100 mark before the end of the season. So just 30 more. So if you haven't and you enjoy the show and want to help the channel grow, please do head over to YouTube. You can subscribe, and then if you want to be notified when we're going live, and again, we go live on Tuesdays and Sundays typically. There is a little bit of fluctuation that happens depending on when the games are, but if you do want to help support us, that's the best way to do so, and you can ring the bell to be notified when we're going live. And thank you, Mile Marker. We appreciate you for sticking with us here and being on the show. And yeah, Jeffrey, any parting words you want to leave the people with here on our Tuesday night episode?
We really appreciate the support and people tuning in and people active in the chat. Thanks for joining us, Mile Marker. And hopefully everybody has a good rest of the week here until we see you again.
Yeah, we're getting ever closer to the holiday season, Jeffrey, and we'll be back on Sunday to talk about this upcoming matchup with the Chicago Bears. And hopefully we extend that to a 9-game losing streak for the Bears.
Yes.
So looking forward to that. All right, everyone. We'll catch you during the next episode. Bye-bye.